Welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Neller, and I'm the host of My Golden Life. And this is a podcast for women in the second half of life. And today we are going to talk about something I think is very interesting, and I haven't really studied it much. So that's why I have a guest with me. We're going to talk about human design as a way to um, understand yourself better and for personal growth and development. And so with me today is Lori Lisai. Am I saying that right, Lori?
Yeah, it's Lisai.
Lisai, Lori Lisai. And welcome, Lori. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about this topic. As you know, I have opted not to delve in too deep because I've already got so much other stuff that I'm doing. But I think there's an audience out there that would really love to learn about human design, that particular tool would be right up their alley. And so that's why I invited you, because we're serving the same audience. And yet, everybody's going to have a different way of seeking out support and help. And so I wanted to share this particular method that you are gifted at. And so I almost never read a bio anymore. I used to do that, but now I'm just going to let you tell us your story, give us some background and how you ended up in this fabulous field.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Lori Lisai, and I was an educator for 26 years. And I distinctly remember the moment when I knew I wouldn't be returning to school the following year, which was during a meeting where we were planning for the following year. This was during like the COVID upset, and I was really excited because we had been experimenting with a lot of things. I was in sort of the school change work that was happening at our school. And so I was really excited that that was happening. And ultimately the call was made to kind of return to the status quo. And in that moment, I felt it so clearly in my body, just this drop of like, oh, I don't think I'm coming back next year. And because of my design, it took a little bit for that to really sink in and for me to feel through that. But I had been learning about human design and starting to share it with my friends and colleagues. And it helped me ultimately to trust myself enough to take that leap into this entrepreneurial venture, where what I'm doing now is helping people to trust their bodies, trust their inner wisdom, intuition, and actually like tune into what your energetics tell you about how to do that. And especially in this second half of life where we're already in this phase of redefining ourselves, I think that human design is such a beautiful tool to use to do that.
Thank you for that. I love the fact that you have an education background, which tells me you like to teach. So you are teaching people about human design and this new passion of yours. It's not maybe brand new, but so let's talk about human design for people who don't know what that is.
Yep.
Define that for us and tell us more about what it is. And
Yeah. So essentially, human design is a map of your energy. It's like your energetic blueprint. And it's a synthesis of systems that helps you to understand yourself better. And I think the reason that it's so impactful when you use it is because we spend so much time in our lives taking on expectations of other people and trying to kind of live by rules that maybe don't resonate for us because we want to, we want to fit into boxes. We want to make things smooth. We want things to kind of just chug along without resistance. And that's not really how you're designed to be your best and highest self. So human design is a combination of, it pulls on some ancient wisdom like the chakra system, the Kabbalah, the Western astrology, the tree of life is the Kabbalah, and then genetics and quantum mechanics like are mixed in there as well. So it's sort of like this artsy science. You know, there's an interpretive kind of component to it, and there's also a science component to it that's linked to our genes and genetics.
Cool. So let's break that down a little bit. There's several different elements to understanding human design and your own design. And you mentioned the chakras. So let's just define what chakras are for our audience, because some of them might not know. It's a very yogic and Sanskrit term. So
Yeah.
if you could just briefly, and I'd like to kind of go through that too, and Kabbalah, and not in depth, but just give us a little background on each one.
Yeah. So the chakra system, the traditional chakra system is there are 7 different chakras, and they're basically like points in your body where certain types of energies kind of live, and they correlate roughly with, our body. So like we have a head center, for example, that is in our head. But it's energetic, it's the energy of what happens in the different parts of our body. So the traditional chakras, there are 7 of those, and in human design, the sort of evolved version is that they're called centers. So we call them energy centers, and there are 9 of those. So we have the head center, the mind or the ajna, the throat, the G center or identity center, the sacral, the heart or the will. Some of them have multiple names, the spleen, and the root, and the emotional solar plexus. So there are 9 different centers, and depending on what your chart looks like, so how you get your human design chart is plugging in your birth information. So it's all based just on that. And depending on what your chart looks like, we'll give you information about how your energy works in each of those kind of centers.
Yeah, and the goal is to balance each center, right? And so there are various methods that you can use to balance each center. And I think what a lot of people don't know is that these energy centers are connected to your psyche. And so working through them and healing them and balancing them is what's going to bring you to what I like to call homeostasis, right? So that really nice, smooth, energetic, like easy flowing energy.
Yeah.
Okay. Kabbalah, what is that?
So Kabbalah is the tree of life. And when you look at the body graph, you'll see that each of the centers is connected by something called a channel. And that's where the Kabbalah comes in. This is related to like our universal laws, and where things like the law of assumption kind of comes in, and the physics of like the science component of human design comes into the circuitry, it's called. So I don't want to confuse your listeners, because as I said, it's a synthesis of these systems. So while all of these systems are part of human design, it's almost like they were, they imagine like throwing all of your ingredients in to make cookies. You can't necessarily taste each separate one when you're eating the cookie, but it's something new that comes out of it. So the tree of life, you see that in the circuitry, and that sort of speaks to how we live in relationship to other people and how our energy flows from one part of our body and center to another.
Gotcha. Okay, so it is intricate and it is scientific, and I was thinking about the astrology piece of it. I've never researched astrology. I've never really learned much about it, but I know somebody recently that has introduced it to me, and that's been very helpful for her. So can you just speak to that a little bit about how astrology fits in?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, going back to the body graph, if you look at the sides of your body graph, there will be two columns, and you'll see the different glyphs for planets. And each planet has a number next to it, and those numbers correlate to what are called gates in human design. Um, there are a different number of gates in each of the centers in human design. And gates are like sort of like granular levels of energy. So if a center has, let's use the throat center as an example. So let's say that your throat center is open or undefined, meaning that it doesn't have color in it when you look at your body graph. Then that means that you are meant to amplify other people's voices. It means that you take in energy and process it and let it kind of flow through you in that area. So when you talked earlier about healing, a lot of times people who have an open or undefined center, throat center, can struggle with words, with consistency of being able to speak freely and have things flow. And so the idea of the gates in your human design, if you have gates that are defined there, then that's like a more granular energy that you can tap into to help you, even if you have an undefined throat center. And those gates are further kind of, they have like a specific flavor of the planet that they're in. So let's say that you had gate 12, which is in your throat center. That's the gate of caution. Let's say you have that, but it's in your Jupiter. So Jupiter is all about expansion. It's all about, gifts and bringing in like big ideas and it just expands everything that's related to it. And so if you think about, gate 12 being in your throat, then it would sort of amplify the energy of that gate for you. Does that make sense?
I mean, it's yes, I can see how deep it is just
Yeah.
by what you're saying, and that the astrology piece, that there is something about when you're born and where the planets align and where the moon is and all of that on the day that you're born and the time that you're born, that has something to do with all of those other things. And
All
has
right.
some, yeah,
Let me explain that, because
okay,
a lot of people wonder. So one of the things you love to use is Enneagram, correct?
yes, yes.
Okay. An Enneagram is a quiz essentially that you need to answer, a number of different questions, what resonates with you to come to your sort of results, correct?
Your personality type, your
Yeah.
general personality type. Yeah, and I look at that as a portal into the self-development and the self-understanding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So human design is similar. It's very similar in terms of you can look at your personality components in human design. There's a whole side of human design that's all about your personality. Uh, the idea of using your birth time, though, comes down to science. This is where we get into the physics and the real nitty gritty of scientific components. So there's something called a neutrino. And if you've never heard of it, it's basically the smallest bit of measurable matter in the universe. And at any one time, we have neutrinos, like billions of neutrinos passing through all of us, the ether, our physical bodies, everything in all the different moments of time. And so these neutrinos carry information, which is what gives them that mass and makes them measurable. So at the time of your birth, essentially what human design does is measures or gives you that blueprint of the neutrino stream that was passing through you at that moment, which can be measured according to planetary placements and what's happening, in the ethers. And then approximately 88 days before your birth, you have the other side of your design that's measured through the neutrinos that were passing through you in the womb. Interestingly, 88 days prior to birth is roughly when we gain consciousness in utero. So there's a connection there. And it's interesting, human design came on the scene really relatively recently in the 80s. And it wasn't until years later that neutrinos were actually proven in the scientific world to even exist. Like they were, so anyway, it's pretty amazing how it all kind of came to be, this information. And ultimately, if all that sounds like too crazy or too woo-woo, what I tell people is just, it is an experiment. Just like I'm sure you use the Enneagram, it gives you, like you said, a portal into understanding yourself. And so when you get your human design, it doesn't matter if you believe in astrology or if you believe that everything is energy, or if, it really doesn't matter what you believe. It just gives you an invitation to say, okay, well, let's start with your type, for example. Maybe you're a generator type. So do you notice that you are magnetic? Do you notice that when you're feeling really good, people are naturally drawn to you, as an example? And if that's the case, then how can you utilize that? How can you use that knowledge to help you kind of create the life that you want? So just as an example of how, to use human design, even though it is such an in-depth system, you can keep it really simple and just start experimenting with the little pieces.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Lori, many women in midlife are facing significant transitions, like such as career changes, empty nesting, menopause. How can human design help them navigate these changes more smoothly and align with their true selves?
Oh my gosh. This is exactly the kind of work that I love to do with women. Because, there's this whole idea that the midlife crisis, right? And it is true that there are all of these changes, like you're talking about, the potentially a job change because we get bored or we aren't feeling fulfilled, or same thing, like potentially a change in your partnership. Maybe your children are leaving, growing up, they don't need you as much as a mother, right? And so there's this huge potential for an identity shift. And what I love about human design is it just tells you in black and white, this is how your energy works. This is actually who you came here to be. So what are you going to do about it now? Like, are you going to be brave enough to take those steps toward being yourself as you designed yourself kind of to come here? Or, are you going to stick with the status quo? And as you can tell, I'm not a fan necessarily of the status quo. I'm really about like, okay, how can you get brave and, experiment with these things? And so to give you a concrete example, let's talk about, actually, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, when we talked earlier about your chart, that you're a 6'2".
I don't remember that, but
okay.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that that's the case. So there's a component of human design called the profile, and that really is about our personality. And so a 6'2" is really designed to share learnings in this third part of life. So A six, I see very much as this idea of the maiden, mother, crone archetypes,
Yeah.
where, yeah, in that third part of life, you've experimented, you've lived the things, you've let life get messy, and then you've kind of withdrawn a little bit. It's called being on the roof. You've kind of come back into yourself to integrate all of that. And then in this third part of life, you are called forward to share those stories, to sometimes they're even like pulled out of you because people really need that information and that knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's a great example of, being in midlife. If you know that you're a 6'2", you're going to be called out. It's a chance for you to say, okay, well, what have I learned in life? What do I feel like I've mastered? Maybe what do I feel like I am drawn to teaching and sharing? What do I have to give back? And then that can very much become part of your purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so. I'm really personally into this idea of generativity, which is using your golden years, if you will, for leaving behind something valuable to the next generation. And I read this book called The Second Half of Life by Angeles Arian back in my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, and she talks about these 8 gates of initiation as you become an elder, and all of these things that you have to have processed or gone through in order to be that crone, to be that woman who is going to, use her voice and like you said, just pass on that wisdom and that knowledge. So yeah, I totally get that.
Mm.
Um,
I love that for a 6 line. That's beautiful. And if your listeners are listening to this and they have a 6 line in their profile, that's a great place to kind of start to get curious. Like, okay, what do I have to share? You know?
yeah.
Like,
Okay, so what are some common challenges or misconceptions that people might have when they first start exploring human design? And how
yeah.
can they overcome these challenges?
Yeah, yeah. So I think you've probably gotten a glimpse into one of the challenges, which is the complicated nature of human design. And I think that, you know, the key is, for me, if you are drawn to something, that is a very clear indication that it is for you. There's something in it for you. So if you are curious about human design, if you clicked play on this episode, then there's something here for you. So if you are listening to the episode and feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my God, there's so much, then that's just an invitation for you to kind of take a step back and just start slow and really just dip your toe in the water with small experiments. Maybe get curious about your profile, or maybe get curious about your type, and just start to play and see how it makes a difference in your life. Even things like honoring your type. If you, for example, learn that you are a non-sacral being, either a projector, a reflector, or a manifester, that means that you are in a small percentage of the population. You're in 30% of the population, and you're living in a generator world. 70% of the population is a sacral being. They're either a generator or a manifesting generator. And so our world, the vast majority of us, are movers and shakers. We're doing. We're going, going, going. We're like, we've got battery power. We have creative life force energy. If you're a non-sacral being, you don't have consistent access to that. So rest is really, really important. And it's not to say that rest isn't important for the generator types, but just to say that if you are in that 30%, understanding that about yourself can be such an incredible revelation. Like, oh my God, like suddenly I feel seen. Suddenly I feel understood for not being able to keep up with my family when we go on vacation, or for just wanting a complete week off to read my book while, I sit by the pool instead of going on 27 adventures that my family wants to go on. So I think the challenge can be in the overwhelm, but it doesn't have to be, because you really can start small, and even just one component of human design can literally change your life and the way that you approach things. So I wouldn't feel, overwhelmed or afraid when you start to learn. And if you're a one line, you're probably like jumping right in anyway. I am a one line, and one lines love to research and learn and just give me all of the things. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So what kind of person is going to be attracted to human design? I mean, is it a geeky person? Like if someone, like I would say probably all kinds of personalities would be interested in the human design. But certainly there's other characteristics of people who might be more drawn to it than others.
Yeah. I tend to find that people who are curious about things like Enneagram, curious about astrology, any of those tools for just knowing themselves better, that they're going to find their way to human design in some way, shape, or form. If you're not really on a journey to know yourself better, or any sort of like self-improvement, then you're probably not going to be drawn so much to it. But in the end, it's like everybody has a design. We all have an energetic blueprint. Whether you want to learn about it or not is really up to you. But I do find that it's often people that are already, trying to better themselves in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm really, as a yogi, very interested in self-study. That's part of being a yogi, is to learn about yourself. So I'm always really open to learning about myself. And you have to be kind of humble, and, like my kids will call me out on stuff and I just have to be like, really? Okay. Is that really
Yeah.
how you see me? And so you can't like take things personally, but I also think, just be open-minded. Like if you're gonna delve in a little bit, just open your mind and see what it has to teach you. And I love that you are like, you could just take baby steps, you could just take it a little bit at a time and learn about yourself that way. But yes, you do have to be interested in knowing who you are. And I think it's essential in having really good relationships in your life, and being on track with your life purpose, your life work, your career, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's an exciting journey for people. And I certainly think, if anybody listening is at all interested, you can connect with Lori, and she's going to share with us now how we can get a hold of her. So let
Yeah,
us know how.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you are curious about what your chart looks like, you can go to my website and get it for free. My website is lorilisai.com. Lisai is spelled Lisai.com. And yeah, just download your chart. It's, it might look a little crazy at first. It's a bunch of numbers and lines and triangles and squares and shapes. But I also include for you a free download that's like a mini guide to human design, and it gives you some basics to start with, your type, strategy, and authority. And honestly, everything in human design always comes down to your strategy and authority. So while it is a very in-depth system that you can go down the rabbit hole for, years and years, you always want to come back to those two components. So if you start with practicing those and learning a little bit, about them, and seeing what the experiment looks like in your life, then you're already winning. You're already so many steps ahead. So get that free guide and your chart. And I also do, sessions and longer term work with women who are interested in, learning how to actually apply it in life.
Yeah, so it's Lori Lisai. Is it LoriLisai.com? Is that what you said?
You got it. Yep.
Okay, great. So you can download her free chart, or is that what you're calling it? The chart?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and then I would just say, if there's anything you don't understand, then contact Lori. I imagine you have a contact page on your website.
I
And
do.
also,
You can
like, don't be shy about researching, even on your own. Like, if you don't understand a term or something, you can always Google it, right?
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. In that guide, I have some vocabulary for you to get started because it is a lot, there's a lot of learning, but I draw on my teacher background to, try to give you a good basis to work with. And yeah, if you have questions, feel free to reach out on Instagram. I'm on at Lori Lisai on all the socials as well. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, Lori, thank you so much for sharing an intro to human design for us. I wish you all the success in the world, and everybody, you know where to find her now. It will be in the show notes as well. And I just want to thank you for your time so much. So have a great day.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let me see here. I'm going to stop record as soon as I figure out how to do that. Because my record button is not.
It disappears. Go down to the more button and
Yeah,
click and there you go. You should have it. And then
there
you
it
should,
is.
there you go.
Yay, got it.